So today I'm going to take you inside what really happens when a coach loses their job. And honestly, one of the darkest times in my career. We're going to go to round 19 of 2012. Port Adelaide were playing the GWS Giants, and not the GWS Giants we know now. They'd only won one game for the season coming into it, and that win was against the other new team in the competition, a team full of kids, the Gold Coast Suns. And I remember looking at some of the names from the Giants, and a lot of them I was unfamiliar with, and probably 90% of their side was full of 18-year-old kids. And I vividly remember saying to myself, well, we can't possibly lose to this side because they're just a bunch of kids who have little experience. They've won one game for the year. We've still got some pretty handy names in our side, and we really should put in a good account for ourselves tomorrow and perhaps get a little bit of the media off our back that was building and circling around the coach and around the future of the Port Adelaide Footy Club. Things were going okay during the game. For the first half, I was ebbing and flowing, but felt like we pretty much had control of the game. And it wasn't until during the third quarter where I thought, pressure is starting to build. I just remember we kept going inside 50 after inside 50 after inside 50, just multiple times. They'd kick the ball out, we'd kick it back in, but we were just unable to score. So we went in at three-quarter time thinking, well, we're going to have to get something going here pretty soon. But it was the Giants. They kicked the opening goal, and from then on, I just remember the Channel 7 broadcast kept panning up to the coach's box, and the pressure you could clearly see was building on the coach. Now, this is me playing. So during the game, I'm looking up to the big scoreboard, seeing the camera vision panning up to Matthew Primus, going, well, there's a big story building here, and one that I shouldn't have been thinking of whilst I was playing, but one that was playing out behind the scenes when it quickly realised that we were perhaps going to be the second victory for the Giants this year, and Port Adelaide were going to stoop to its lowest ebb yet in probably the history of the football club. At that stage, I think it was that Primus got up and left the coach's box. The cameras followed him the whole way, to the point where the cameras then panned down to the change room cameras, and you could see a pretty lonely and forlorn figure, Matthew Primus, just waltzing through an empty change room, knowing that his future had pretty much been decided with this result that was unfolding in front of his very eyes right now. I remember sitting down in the visitors' change rooms for Matthew Primus's briefing, and the first thing he said to us was, well, boys, I'm So he knew it. He knew his career was over, and he knew how devastating it had been with the way things had played out, and a result that just should never have ever happened against a bunch of 18-year-old kids that basically sealed his fate as a coach. I came home on the Sunday evening. By the time I got on the plane on Sunday, Matthew Primus still had a job, but when I got off, the media story had broken that he had lost his job. So we turned up to the football club on that Monday. As you can imagine, the story had broken that Matthew Primus was about to lose his job. It wasn't official by the club yet, but he did address us in plain clothes, which was interesting to see just because you're used to seeing him in club apparel. And then he fronted the press pack, as did the outgoing CEO, Brett Duncanson, who also decided it was time for him to stand down. It was a dramatic day at the footy club. Now, that afternoon, a new caretaker coach was announced, and that was going to be Gary Hocking. And the first thing Buddha Hocking addressed us with, and I'll never ever forget this, he said, boys, our coach has just paid the ultimate price for our performance and how pathetic we have been. Now it's time for us to pay the price. I want to see you at Grange Beach at 4 a.m. in the morning. Go home, and I'll see you then. Middle of winter by now. It's July. It's freezing. We turn up to the beach. It's pitch black. 4 a.m. in the morning at Grange Beach, and I've never seen the ocean put on an uglier display. There was waves crashing over. It was as cold as you can imagine. Buddha said, strip down. We're about to pay the price. So we all got into our budgie smugglers or board shorts. There was no wetsuits or anything like that allowed. And usually when coaches have this sort of threat, it's a quick dip, 5 minutes, you might get under, do a few duck dives, and then get out, get warm, get in your car, go home and have a shower. But this was completely different. We stayed out in that freezing cold water for over an hour at 4 a.m. and it is honestly the coldest that I have ever been, to the point where you really did question whether you wanted to keep doing this. Like, that's how depressing it was to turn up to a footy club when you lose. It's great when you're winning, but when you're losing and you're out in the middle of the ocean at 4 a.m. in the middle of winter with no clothes on, with a dejected group, you really do start to question whether this is what you want to be doing with your life. When they finally blew the whistle to say we're allowed to get out of the water, we thought it was finished. We all ran over to get our towels and he said, "Hey boys, we're not done yet. Get in a circle. We're going to continue to pay the price." So for another half an hour, we started doing sit-ups and push-ups, and the sand was freezing. I'll never forget it. My feet were just icy, so cold. The sand was freezing. And the only reason I think they did call it off is because a teammate of mine, Matty Thomas, who has not 1 ounce of fat on him, like he's muscle on muscle, there was no protection from the cold, genuinely started to turn purple to the point where the medicos had to rush him into his car and get him warm because they were concerned that hypothermia was starting to set in. And I'm not exaggerating there. I went home, depressed, sat in the shower for about an hour, and that was the price that we paid for the coach losing his job. A small one, mind you. And Buddha Hocking went on to coach the last 5 games of the season. I think we won a couple, there might have been a draw in there, and did a pretty reasonable job before Ken Hinckley came in 2013, and the following year we played finals. But it was certainly the most challenging, testing, certainly depressing couple of years of my career, and that day, the day that we paid the price, I'll never forget.